A very good morning to all of you. Today we are going to discuss P.P. Shelley's poem Ode to the West Wind. In our previous discussion, we have already had a look at what is an ode. Ode to the West Wind, written in 1819 near Florence and published in 1820 in the volume Prometheus Unbound and Other Poems, is a revolutionary poem of P.P. Shelley, expressing his longing to express his radical ideas and the message of reform and revolution far and wide that would lead to widespread change, to quicken a new birth and transform the world. Here, the west wind becomes the trope for spreading the word of change through the poet-prophet figure. The poet understands human limitations and celebrates power and grandeur of the west wind and wishes that the revolutionary ideas could reach every corner of the world. The wind represents the irresistible force of the spirit that embodies the revolutionary storm breaking away from the old world order in pursuit of the new order. In his note to the composition of the poem, Shelley writes, quote, "The poem was conceived and chiefly written in a wood that skirts the Arno near Florence, and on the day when that tempestuous wind, whose temperature is at once mild and animating, was collecting the vapors which pour down the autumnal rains. They began, as I foresaw it, at the sunset with a violent tempest of hail and rain, attended by that magnificent thunder and lightning peculiar to the Cisalpine regions." The phenomenon alluded to at the conclusion of the third stanza is well known to naturalists. The vegetation at the bottom of the sea, of rivers and of lakes sympathizes with that of the land in the change of seasons and is consequently influenced by the winds which announce it. Next to that, I would like to point out that the ode invokes the spirit of the west wind, that is both destroyer and preserver, and with a spark of creative vitality, and it concentrates on those aspects of the autumn season that presage the death of the year or the death of one season and the bleakness of winter. And yet its purpose is to look beyond that bleakness to the reawakening and rejuvenation that is to take place in the spring beyond the winter. All the melancholy it expresses is swept aside ultimately, and the poem ends on a note of hope. If winter comes, can spring be far behind? From the first line till the last, the poem moves constantly with the sweep and force of the wild wind. It celebrates and finally emerges as a passionate and forceful longing for such powers as the wind possesses. The ode consists of 5 sections with a new stanza form, where each stanza is composed in the form of a sonnet. Each stanza is comprising of 14 lines, as a sonnet comprises of 14 lines, and each of which has 4 tercets, that is units of 3 lines each, followed by a couplet. Written in iambic pentameter, the poem follows the Italian terza rima pattern. The rhyme scheme runs on this pattern: ABA, BCB, CDC, DED, followed by a rhyming EE couplet. The poem can be divided into 2 parts. The first 3 sections, or the first 3 stanzas, or the first 3 sonnets describe the wind's effects upon the earth, in air, and in the ocean, in the autumn, and each ends with an invocation, "O ear," perhaps addressing the ode to endow the poet prophet with the power to bring about the desired change in the life of the suffering humanity. In the last two sections, the poet speaks directly to the wind, asking for its power to lift him up and make him its companion in its wanderings. The poem ends with an optimistic note, which is that if winter is here, then spring is not very far. Today I would like to pause here, and I would like to suggest you to continuously watch this series, because I will be discussing every day one stanza of the poem or one sonnet or one part of the poem in detail. So this was all about the introductory note on Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. We shall meet next time with a discussion on the first part of the poem or the first stanza of the poem. Thank you so much.